this, and then go back here.
Bad J being there as it was watching on TV?
No, I was at Wrigley Field.
I thought you had the Bears one.
I was at the Bears game too, but we don't talk about that. So that's not a discussion point in my family right now. I got home and my wife's like, we're not talking about that. I'm like, okay. I got to see my brother, and my brother from Arizona came in, so it was nice. No, the Wrigley game we went to was like 83 degrees at 8 o'clock at night and humid, and it was awful. Oh, there was no air movement. You're just sitting there, just pounding water.
You look at the patches they did, and you're just screaming.
Sorry about
why
that.
didn't you just
Probably
do
did.
in between? I mean, we know why, but
Right.
for the typical motorist, you're like,
Right, this is only control course.
we spent
Are you up and running?
on year one block.
We are, so he went to go grab the actual recorder, though. He wants the voice record also. We've found it's been best to have a backup in case the YouTube doesn't work, so. But it appears to be working.
Well, you're just like totally into transportation.
Well, I don't think I'm gonna be able to make the meeting tomorrow night, so I figure I should come to this one. And I probably can't make the Thursday either. I need to talk to
I don't think I'll be Thursday.
Mr. Grant. Well, I mean, I was ready to go last week, so I was like ready to go, and I'm like, oh crap, okay, I guess we're canceled.
It wasn't posted.
I know, yep, that would be a problem.
Yeah, well, that doesn't require posting, right? So,
Yeah, they did a
because
good job.
it's not a public
Yeah.
meeting.
Yep, go, you're good, sorry.
Alderman, I believe you're good to go.
Okay, I'd like to call this Transportation Committee meeting to order. Roll call, everyone's here. I guess there's no citizen comments regarding items not on the agenda because there's no citizens. EV, or Diggins Street School Crossing, staff report.
So Gary and I talked about this in the time since, and even a little bit today. In order to do any crossing to Diggins Street, we have to complete the rest of the sidewalk in order for it to be received somewhere. Right now, we'd have to continue the sidewalk into the park space, and then we'd also have to deal with the corner of Park Point. Right now, both sidewalks in Park Point dump out into the into like a landscaped area that the HOA owns. So there's a couple different ways we could do this. If we decide to make the if we decide to do the sidewalk to the north, we'd have to address the south crossing in between the landscape barriers, and then also deal with IDOT for the study and the rights to. The other thing we can do is the nearest crossing on 173 is on Garfield. There's two ADA panels that face each other across 173. You could make a sidewalk that goes along 173 to get to that crossing, but then again, we're dealing with right-of-way and permitting and all that, similar to what we're dealing with on 14. So we can kind of go about this a few different ways. It'd just be what the Transportation Committee would like us to proceed with.
So, looking at the map, where are we?
I believe the area of concern was Park Point,
No, it wasn't.
or
No, it was actually done by Garfield.
That was Jefferson, that,
so
There's
right
Garfield,
now.
there's Jefferson.
So if it is Jefferson, if we're looking just for lighted crossings, there will be ADA panels. They're going to go through there. There's ADA panels there already, but as far as if we want to add, a lighted crossing, I believe we just have to submit IDOT for that, Gary.
Oh, it wouldn't be lighted. It would just be a crosswalk. with
Beaconed?
signage. Are you looking for something more than that?
well, that's what
Is that like what's up on 14 by Jefferson School, right?
Yeah, that would just be, that's a signage and a crosswalk. Right now there's an ADA panel on either side, which means that if somebody stands there, traffic should stop. They are doing improvements. I actually have it on a thumb drive as well. that shows the actual improvements. They're gonna stop just short of, I believe, Grant Street. With
Heading east?
heading east.
Okay.
So they will be doing ADA improvements throughout.
So who's doing that?
IDOT.
Oh, I don't.
This is their- so-
176?
173, yes.
170.
Are they doing this corner? This is a problematic corner.
I believe they stopped just short of Grant. I'd have
This
to,
Grant, so.
let me
this
see if I
corner,
can pull it up real
There's a huge
quick.
elevation change right here. That is, makes this one really tough.
Yeah, I think, I think the original, I took the original citizen's complaint on this, and what the guy told me kind of made sense in that there's absolutely nothing there now. I mean, there's nothing that tells them to slow down, nothing to tell them there's going to be a whole bunch of school kids there, and nothing. And ever since they changed the purpose of Central School, there used to be signs all over that place, but those are all gone now. And so, you literally would have to go down to, where air comes in and so on, I think, to get a push button to be able to.
Corners.
so the
fit
project,
sidewalks.
the project ends just short of Grant Street. So it does cross Garfield, and which means it also goes across Jefferson and Hart. And they have ADA standard. It says proposed ADA sidewalk improvements per the standard.
And what will that,
They're doing a smart overlay, so that includes any, same thing we're dealing with Route 14 north of 5 Points, is anytime they do the road surface, they have to improve any of the ADA panels. So they have improvements slated for those areas. We did make, I sent these plans to Gary, and Gary marked them up, and we sent them back to IDOT for consideration, because they did have some goofy stuff at 5 Points. Where two crosswalks meeting in the middle of nowhere in the street.
for the like slope and wheelchair accessibility and whatnot, what else does the ADA?
They have to, basically, they're gonna have to follow the same guidelines that they held us to, which is the percent grade, the width, the detectable warning surfaces, all that stuff as they go through. And so basically, they're doing a fall letting for spring construction, a spring letting for summer construction, I believe a summer letting for fall construction. And they're gonna be doing basically Route 14 all through town, and Route 173 from 5 Points east to just short of Grant.
What about, something like, I've seen it in other places where during the mornings and afternoons when there's a lot of school kids around, where there's a sign that says, school crossing, and maybe the speed limit goes down, or.
The ones with the flashing lights?
Yeah. Is that require an awful lot of extra involvement that we?
I think there's gotta be a school there, though.
I think it's gotta be within a certain distance of the school, but I don't know what that is.
So here's my 2 cents. In an urban area, which this is, city blocks, crosswalks are needed or required. If you want to put in a crosswalk, you can, across a state route. For this speed limit and that width of street, it's literally painting the crosswalk lines, putting 2 signs right at the crosswalk, and then 2 signs in advance of the crosswalk, kind of like what we discussed on Front Street.
Yeah.
It'd be that same thing. If you wanted to do what's called pedestrian actuated signals, you can do that. But I have to caution everyone that when you make one street special, all the other streets become unspecial. So to the motorists, they're not paying attention anymore. And I'm sure you got people crossing at all these streets, not just one. So the second thing is, by law, of course, if there's someone standing at that curb waiting to cross the street, by law, a car is supposed to stop. Now, we know that, most of the time that doesn't happen. So sometimes when you put in a crosswalk with signs, it gives a false sense of security to the pedestrian. So there's a lot of things to consider here. but it can be done. So if you want to do either a standard crosswalk with the signage like you did on front, or the next step up is a pedestrian actuated signal where a pedestrian pushes a button and then the yellow lights flash, that can be done too. You just got to do a small little engineering report. It's not even a report, it's a couple pages. And then submit the data that IDOT wants, traffic counts, ped counts, and then you send it to the geometrics unit at IDOT, and they'll either approve it, deny it, or tell you what you have to do if you want them to approve it. But I don't see an issue getting it done. It's just I really want you guys to think about what you're asking for.
Unintended consequences.
So what was the specific complaint or concern that you got?
That, trying his kids, his kids, had, difficulty crossing, Diggins.
Yeah.
Every morning and afternoon, and there was no signs, no anything, and he thought there should be something there that helps kids get across. I mean, he was understanding. He says, we can't hire crossing guards at every intersection, and so on. I mean, he understood that, but
It's a valid concern, and
Oh, yeah.
worthy to
Right.
bring to you.
Oh, absolutely.
and so I told him that, I'll bring it up at the next meeting, and I invited him here. And, but I figured he wouldn't be here, but I'll call him and let him know what, where we have it.
I mean, is there anything, just with signage? I don't know, reminding people to yield to pedestrians? I don't
Well,
know.
I think it's the same issue that we had with the former Catholic school on Route 14, right at, not Church Street, but at Sumner Street.
Yeah,
And so there is literally sign and, painted crosswalk, which accomplished the crossing for, school crossing. So, that one actually got utilized by large groups because the kids were going back and forth to the church. So there was, I think, at one point talk about trying to do a pedestrian activated, but for the same reasons I think that were mentioned here, they weren't.
Yeah.
So I would seem to think that just the signage and marking the crosswalk would at least be a significant improvement over what there is today.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have one across 173 anywhere, right? Not a marked crosswalk.
No, there's none.
No.
So we should put one. I don't see the,
I think the only
I don't
one
see
would
the
be
much downside
the
there.
only one is here, which is
Intersection 5 point.
is not quite, it's
I agree it is a false sense of security, but same token,
Yeah.
it highlights it.
Do we know if Jefferson is the more used block? Do we have any data to support which block is best?
It's in the right street.
Yeah,
Right.
because,
Jefferson, because Jefferson School and the high school are both at the end of Jefferson.
right,
Would be my only thought.
I know that,
Why not do one at Jefferson and Garfield?
But at the same point in time, so I'll play devil's advocate at this, at the same point in time, why wouldn't we just encourage the children to walk to a controlled intersection then, 2 blocks away?
which is,
5 points.
5 points.
Because then there's a actual crosswalk, lit, walk, don't walk sign.
Well, from a kid's standpoint.
Yeah,
that's 2 blocks that way, and then you got 2 blocks back the other
plus
way.
I get you.
it's accumulative too.
Yeah,
You still got Garfield, and now they would have to walk all the way down there, so. I live on Jefferson, and I'm not that far, north. And there are quite a few kids that walk on both sides of Jefferson on their way to school. And, I think they even walk all the way to the junior high, through there. They jog over at some point and, to get on Garfield, to go to, but I think that,
Well, the one thing you can mention is that Jefferson looks like it has sidewalks on both sides of the street. I don't believe Garfield does its full length, and I know Lincoln doesn't.
another, I would be interested, at least from, before we make a decision, is to find out what the cost of the signal.
It's about $6,800.
How much?
$6,800.
Okay.
For a pedestrian activated one?
Plus the engineering.
Have you put one in recently there, Gary?
No, I got actually in there, that handout that I gave everyone for Front Street, it actually has costs in there
I see.
of all the different improvements. That's kind of their Bible for crosswalks.
Does that include installation, or is that just for the,
No, it would include installation.
it's everything?
That's maintained by us from then on out, right?
That's just one, though, you need two.
That's per crossing.
Oh, per crossing.
How much would it cost to just every street on 173 just put crosswalks
Crosswalk?
on everyone, just paint
Marked.
them all?
With the sign, you mean, in the,
This is something that Gary and I, I just asked Gary that, we just gave these notes to IDOT maybe a week and a half ago, that we may be able to ask for extra detail to see if they might be able to paint it as part of their process.
Don't think you're gonna get every block.
No.
Not like every other block, like Jefferson and Grant, or then Garfield, right, do Jeffs, yeah.
Mine was more like a devil's advocate, like Rob was. Why don't you just direct them to where it's already controlled?
And really, and you mentioned Park Point at the beginning, we had this conversation in the park board, didn't we, like 5 years ago? Because the kids coming out of park, unless they're crossing that private lot, or going down, I don't know how they're getting over other than walking around where there's no sidewalk at all. They have, it's just kind of real sketchy. There should be a crosswalk over to that park. And then they could, there should be sidewalks here. Well, I agree with that. And again, produce the money, that's.
Because it looks like at Garfield, at least what I can see here, that, there's, on the one side, there's no sidewalk.
Well,
What Jay's talking about is
Yes,
up here,
over there, yeah.
across from,
don't most people use
Park
the
Point.
bus in Park Point?
I was thinking, don't they take the bus?
They probably get driven.
well, no, the discussion that was at the Parks Board was going from Park Point to the pool and library
Yeah,
and all.
right.
So any pedestrian, there is no
Oh, yeah, yeah.
sidewalk on Galvin Parkway north of 173.
And really what I
and
would do
this-
is put
And
it,
this sidewalk stops like right here, and this one stops right here, so there's nothing across, and I think we had engaged IDOT on the issue, and it would require a study and a bunch of things in order to,
I think it was pretty expensive too. Wasn't it like 60 grand or something?
it was not a inexpensive solution.
Right. Because it would be a lit, where you could push the button and.
So do they cut through that on the right, that empty area?
They probably
think?
do, I would
Okay.
assume.
Towards the pool.
So I would recommend the city writing a letter to IDOT, asking them to put in a crosswalk at either Jefferson, Garfield, or both as part of their mill and resurface project, and see if you can't get them to do it for you. However, it's that's March letting,
I think so.
so time's kind of the essence here. Mama always says it never hurts to ask.
That's absolutely right. The worst they can say is no.
So I'll make that motion. Do we have to make a motion?
No, you just have to direct.
Direct staff then to do that.
At both, or one? At both Jefferson and Garfield, or one or the
Lots
other?
apart?
Both?
That would give you in every other block for,
Yeah.
the main areas of walking.
So what are the streets?
It would be Jefferson and Garfield.
Garfield, okay.
Yeah, and then there's already one at Division, at Fort
Correct.
Dade, so, yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this subject? EV charging station proposal, Environmental Defenders Grant.
So Environmental Defenders did receive a grant for about, I think it was $5,500 to put an EV station. They're asking the city for a location. My suggestion was that I was going to bring forward is and it's for, they're looking for 2 stalls. So my suggestion would be to take 2 stalls along the backside of the city parking lot, or potentially put like access either Milky Way Park or one of the other parks, or even down by the pool, set 2 stalls aside so that they can install.
Can we do Metro?
Yeah, why not Metro?
Or-
Yeah, I would say that'd be the best.
Yeah, these are suggestions, so yes, we could pretty much put it anywhere.
Well, that's where Woodstock put theirs.
Yeah.
And
Question, would you put it in the Metro lot where you can charge them, or put them on the street next to the Metro lot where they're not charged? I would suggest the Metro lot, because commuters could plug their car in while they're commuting into Chicago and
yeah, so
come
you're
back.
gonna get 1 car charged a day.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Right.
No, it's
just
the
there,
unit they're
yeah.
looking for will actually have 2 handles, so you can charge 2.
Yeah, and I think that's what that's the 5,500 is the
Right.
2 slots, 1 chargers.
One charge. Well, yeah, 1 station with 2 plugs.
Yeah, so you can't have one up in park,
Yeah, well, and that was part of the, you can, but it'd be hard to have 2 of them angled in a way
to reach all the way to the
Yeah.
pool from,
He's talking about
City.
2 different charging systems.
Right, well,
Station.
ideally, you want the stalls to be side by side.
okay. Yep, I think you have to, because there's just 1 charging unit and it's 2 stalls.
Either
So-
side.
Yeah, but how long does it, I mean, I have no idea, so how long does it take to charge a car?
Depends on the size of the power supply. So more amperage, the faster it charges.
These aren't,
How much are these
I
gonna
don't know
charge?
I don't know what these are.
these are basically 220
Yeah, they're slow.
slow. Here's the thing, they came and they presented to the Transportation Committee. I went to their launch of their Woodstock thing. They did put it in the Metro lot, but they don't charge parking in Woodstock for Metro.
That's true.
The city had to pay to have it put in. The city pays for the electricity, because these are not pay units. Unless that's changed.
And I believe these are paid units.
So,
I mean, they would have to
Are you
pay for the
talking about
charge.
That was what they,
are you talking about the charging stations that are in the Metro lot across from Napoli's?
yeah.
I believe one of the issues was with that was that the cost of a unit that charges, the rate of return for the electricity on that the city would pay for was just, the cost of a unit that has the capability to back charge and to take credit cards and all that. It was so cost prohibitive that, if I remember correctly, the city of Woodstock just said it's cheaper to just pay the electric bill than to front the cost for that the fancy.
Because the amount of volume of charging
Correct.
won't offset the cost of the
Right.
unit.
which begs the question of the value.
Right.
Period. I mean, and that's where I kind of got cold feet on the thing is, there was a pretty good expense on that installation. That the charge the city of Woodstock took for putting the electrical in to hook up to that was not trivial. So we would be losing 2 parking spaces here if we did it here. I don't know how, there are times when the parking lot is pretty full. I mean, you need the parking spaces, I think.
Well, I'd suggest if you're going to put it in a city lot, either the Metro lots or the lot that is next to kitty corner from the post office, because that's utilized by consumers as well
That's
as
not a bad
business
idea.
owners.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
How much are we talking about, Charlie, for all in, basically? I mean, they're paying for the unit, we're paying for everything else. What's everything else?
Yeah, I mean, Lou, is that something you talked about with them when you met with them?
I didn't have exact numbers at the time that we talked.
Okay.
Can we table this till we
Yeah,
get
I
it?
Yeah.
think we need numbers.
I'll get those numbers.
And find out
We're not gonna
from,
be doing this till next year anyways.
from Roscoe.
Too late this year.
If you want, I can dig up the stuff I did, because I did quite a bit of that already. Maybe some of those numbers have changed now, because it's been a couple of years, I think, since
I'm sure they,
Well, it was a year
Gonna-
ago that they spoke to us.
but it just seemed to me like that wasn't, I am 100% for charging stations. I think that, and electric cars, I'm on board, but I think you just gotta be smart about how you do it. At some point, I just know that we're gonna have city vehicles, electric city vehicles, because it's gonna be the most practical thing to do. It's police cars, the pickup trucks and so on that we use, at some point, we're gonna do that. And then it's gonna be really important to look for grants and so on to put that kind of infrastructure in. It'll make a tremendous amount of sense. But for the most part, especially for consumers, to me, it's free enterprise. It seems to me like there has to be a business case, and somebody says, I think I can make money at this, and then it'll take off.
Well, and how many are in Harvard right now?
How many what? Just a charging station?
I know Ford has one, Adams has one. Who else?
Ford has 2, I believe.
Ford has 2, okay.
How many electric cars do we have?
We knew once. Was it 5 or something like that? Somebody said they actually knew. I
Well,
think it was
keep in mind that, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, that Ford, the Ford dealership is adding 2 stalls so that they can work on electric vehicles. So they're seeing that as the future.
I mean, because they're moving their whole fleet to electric, yeah.
Well, Ford has got incredible number of dollars tied
Yeah.
up in, it's got to work for them.
That's why they're doing it.
Yeah,
I would say in my professional career that all the automakers are investing heavily into battery technology. So many of the R&D labs that I work with, they're moving away from ICE to battery. So less and less resources towards ICE and more towards battery technology.
So what I can do is follow up with, between Alderman Charlie or Gorman and I, follow back with this committee with some numbers. But at least from hearing, it seemed like there was a consensus that the parking lot by the post office, the
Yes, well, so-
public parking by the post office?
So the question is, what are you trying to accomplish by having a space, right? So obviously you want to attract or provide a benefit for those who drive that type of vehicle, but we should have a plan on where does it make sense to put that. And I would suggest somewhere close to our business district to encourage those people while they're charging their car to shop.
Probably do it there instead of the Metro, because that's kind of,
Where Metro is really strictly about commuters,
and then
right?
it's also diesel engine. So you have electric car, but then you get on a big diesel engine after that.
Well, fair enough, but, it would essentially tie up the stall the entire time that they're traveling versus, something in a more business district, you're encouraging, patronage to our
and
businesses.
I'm curious, I mean, is it 2 hours? I mean, how long, to, don't, come on. Okay. Is it 2 hours to charge? I mean, 4 hours? What are we?
On these slow
talking about?
chargers, it's usually overnight period of 8 hours. They're not fast chargers, so this would be merely sort of like a top-up, because it would be parking at a normal parking spot for somebody with an electric car. That's basically the benefit.
So it's,
It's a convenience service.
yeah,
It's not meant to,
putting $10 in the tank. at the gas station instead of filling it up.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, questions that I would have are, if whatever location we want to put it, what infrastructure do we need to get there?
Right.
Well, you would need
Right.
electricity, that's the
Yeah.
primary piece, and then it would need to be accessible for, ideally it'd be in an existing parking stall, so you wouldn't
Right.
have to add more of that to
Right,
it, so.
but, I mean, what's it gonna cost us to get the electricity that we need there?
The extra.
Yeah, right,
And then one of the other additional is typically you, like paint that stall slightly different, color, so you're highlighting that it's for, electric vehicles only. Or mark it in a way so that it's clear to someone driving up.
Paint it green.
Usually
Rob,
Yeah,
it's
paint it
installed.
green. I mean, I've seen blue.
Can you look into what Woodstock paid their contractor to put in that one at the Metro lot?
Yeah, I can, it should be all public document, but I can call some people over there.
Because I think it'd be similar, probably. It depends on where the transformer is and all that stuff.
I want to say there was significant cost just because the distance from the transformer in the box, and then any improvements you do all have to be prevailing wage, so.
I do not know what power is used to power the tornado siren, but there is a tornado siren that has power to it right there in that lot. So it may not be as,
I believe that's 220.
so that likely would be a very good place and wouldn't take a lot of additional
Really, that lot makes
infrastructure.
a lot of sense. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that far from City Hall, and
I would use that as an opportunity to remove the old tornado siren.
yeah.
So.
or maybe every time someone plugs in, it goes off.
Okay,
No?
anything more on that? Good. Next is sidewalk programs.
So, we were starting up, on the sidewalk program along Division, and, we got hit with more, requirements to the point, it made more sense, especially when, Rob took a look at the long-term plans for, Division, like he mentioned earlier. It makes more sense for the city to just not do the sidewalk this year. Let the state come through and go ahead and put in the ADA ramps. And at that point in 2025 or 2026, we can come back and at least do the sidewalk between the ramps and cut our costs. I know we've got invested quite a bit of engineering already, but at this point, it's starting to tip heavy that it's costing us more in engineering than actual construction costs.
So is engineering done?
They denied Gary's last requests, and they said that we would have to adjust everything, make it 5 feet wide, and meet all their stipulations. They weren't in favor of our requests.
Sidewalks are 4 feet wide now?
Yeah, we put in for a design exception, and they would not grant.
So,
Well, I don't have an issue with them being 5 feet wide there. I mean,
That was my directive, was to put
Yeah.
that,
I
it at the
heard,
width it was.
Right.
I heard something new in there. The sidewalk in between, so that, what the IDOT was complaining about was the ADA pads only?
Yes, they were concerned with the width and the grade.
No.
Or the just, oh, was it?
Sidewalks too.
And the width of sidewalks, right.
Yeah.
So if you recall, the committee directed staffing to submit 4 feet, which is the
I know,
existing
I know.
size, so
Yeah.
if they change it to 5 on the
Right.
pads, that reduces our overall construction cost, and now you're just leaving the sidewalk in between.
But, were they going to allow it, but, so they required 5-foot sidewalks as well, but if they come in and do their part, they only do the pads and they hook up to the 4-foot wide sidewalk? Wait
So,
a
and
minute.
so the suggestion is to kind of cut our losses right now. Let, next year when the state is coming through, and kind of as a rule of thumb, when it comes to IDOT ruled, area, let them do their work first and then come back. and kind of tied with this is that I know the old philosophy was replace the sidewalk with whatever size width was before. But 5 feet is more what we should be doing, especially with ADA requirements and so on.
No, you don't need to have it 5 feet for ADA.
I think the 5 feet's just along state routes.
If you can, so you can do 4-foot sidewalk, but you have to have one 5x5 square every, is it 150, 200 feet, Gary? 200 feet for passing of 2 wheelchairs.
Right.
So,
I
and
know, right?
driveways can
So
meet
they
that
only-
as
they
long
only
as
have
the
to go-
grade is correct.
What does our code say?
For new subdivisions, 5 feet.
So IDOT's trying to make us follow our own code.
Well, their manual says all sidewalks on state routes have to be 5 feet.
They'll probably win all
So
all
what-
of that.
But
So-
they did throw that in our face too, that, hey,
Yes.
I would say that that's excessive in our code, because we've got to replace them eventually.
Well, truthfully, traditionally what it is the homeowner's supposed to replace the sidewalk, but I know the city has opted that the city bear that cost instead, but
No,
No,
no. We-
well, okay, then why are we doing the sidewalks?
That's a
if-
pretty darn good question, actually, but I think that we decided to help, but we didn't say that.
But
it
we're
was
not charging back.
We were not, we did not take on the responsibility of replacing all the sidewalks in the city.
We kind of just did, Charlie, since we started doing this, because everyone that lives here now knows that eventually the city is going to come through and replace them.
Well, then, not eventually, not necessarily.
I know, but that's
Yeah.
you got to remember, that's
Yeah,
how they're
in the
going to
next
view it
100
that way.
years.
I know, but that's how they're going to view it. You should know that by now.
oh, yeah.
Streets can get done too.
But you bring up an interesting point, and, I think we need to revisit the whole sidewalk thing, to tell you the truth. I mean, when my sidewalk sank, because of some work we had done on the putting in a new water line and so on, and one went down below the other, I didn't even think twice about it. I didn't decide I was gonna wait around for the city to fix it and so on. I hired a contractor, and they put something under there, jacked it up, and made it even, and that was the end of it. I felt it was my responsibility. And
That was-
I think
How
that,
much of the sidewalk did you do? Was
well,
it
in
just one-
'92, I went on that 50% thing
Oh, okay,
and did the whole thing.
okay.
And my neighbor went in too, which lowered the price a little more, and, and so on. But my point is that, we need to look at other ways of doing this, because there's $100,000 that we're not gonna spend, according to what I saw, and I think that, that's $100,000 we could be putting towards the road program, which desperately needs as much help as,
Wait, there's something else in here has options that we should probably put
Right.
it to.
And you're correct. Let me just run through these real quick and then open the whole, because they kind of overlap with each other. And I apologize.
I read the options, and I understand those. I'm just saying, though, that I'm just taking a broader look right now, Lou, and it seems
Over
to
the overall sidewalk.
yeah, the overall sidewalk thing, before you get into the individual
Sure.
possibilities. And it seems to me that we should come up with some kind of program to help homeowners in another way. And that is, I keep thinking about that really successful program downtown, where they can do, face work on their buildings and at a no-interest loan. It seems to me like that we ought to be able to do something like that for sidewalks.
You certainly could. That'd be well within your purview to do if you decide you wanted to create a let's call it a revolving loan fund for residential sidewalks.
My concern, Charlie, is that most people, if they're told that they can get their sidewalk replaced if they take out a loan from the city, no interest loan, they're still not gonna do it, because they don't care. And we're serving the people that actually need to use the sidewalks.
So you have other options available to you to compel the residents to do it if you decided you wanted to go that route.
Yes. Yes.
You could do that. The previous city councils have been very weary of wanting to do something like that because obviously you're putting possibly hardship on a homeowner who doesn't, or flat out just doesn't want a sidewalk in front of their house. What I will say is anybody that builds a house today, they're required to pay for the sidewalk to be put in front of their house. And this is an argument I've always had in that those who have existing sidewalks believe in their mind that it's the city's responsibility to replace those sidewalks. When in fact, when the house was built, it was the builder and subsequently the purchaser of the home that paid for that sidewalk. The sidewalks actually are the responsibility of the adjoining homeowner. But because, as you stated, people do not want to spend $5,000 to replace the sidewalk in front of their house when they could spend it on something else that they see as better value to them, most people, I shouldn't say most, there will be a large number of people who flat out would refuse to pay so.
Well, and you look at even when, and I don't, obviously, none of us were here when it happened, but when sidewalks were put in, the ones that are there in the older part of town, apparently people were given a choice about whether they had sidewalk in front of their house or not. So that's why we have this goofy system where 2 houses have sidewalk, 1 doesn't. The next house does, the next one doesn't. I mean, it's goofy because people chose. I mean, it's horrible trying to walk around Harvard and find the routes where there are actually continuous sidewalks. And it's one of the things we talked about with the shoveling, with snow shoveling, is how would you even inspect for it? Because you'd have to know which houses didn't have sidewalks.
Yes.
So you might have shovel, and then there's no shovel, because there's no sidewalk, so, yeah, I mean, and so this does nothing to address those gaps, which we've already done, like on Second.
Which is
where
another
we-
incentive for those people to not put in a sidewalk, because then they don't have to shovel it.
But- And they don't have to replace it, they don't have to fix it.
You know,
If they
there's
don't
a-
have a sidewalk.
There's a lot of people around town who have had, sewer line failures or water main failure, or into the house failures and so on. And they've had to take sections of sidewalk out so they could get a backhoe in there to dig the trench and fix it and so on. And I gotta tell you, most of those have sat there exactly the way they were when they dug the trench.
Because there is no way to compel them to repair it.
Exactly.
Speaking on that, Marengo, in Harvard, we take a street cut deposit if you have to go into the road. Marengo also had a sidewalk deposit. So that if you intersected a section of sidewalk, you also had to pay that deposit, and the city would hold that deposit until you made the sidewalk whole, similar to the street deposit. That'd be something that'd be in consideration. That wouldn't be a bad idea. That's just something I've seen in other municipalities.
That would be your leverage to
Correct.
compel them to repair the sidewalk that was required to be destroyed in other infrastructure that supports that home.
So, I think we just need to take a bigger view of this and come up with something, I think, new that's fairer, more fair. And I think that, with that in mind, Lou, I am for your number 3 while we do that.
Well, so we still needed to talk about, not doing Division Street, the sidewalk right this year.
That's what I'm talking about. Number 3, option.
Yeah, we're not doing it.
Well, 3 is safe.
From your
Oh, from the memo,
recommendation.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at this. My apologies, Been a long day.
So, yes, what's
It's
up
actually
on
Rob's memo.
Well, so number 1, We originally had budgeted $7,000 to go towards doing some more engineering towards fixing the post office. The post office, ever since I got here, seems to be the sidewalk there has been a constant issue, and it keeps getting kicked down the road. So, in talking with Rob, Gary, and the rest of the crew, we are suggesting to the committee to reallocating the $100,000 that was for construction on Division to go towards solving the handicap accessibility area around the post office.
That would be my number 2.
So are we talking about,
So
just
what-
to do the $7,000?
So
study?
the $7,000 study was already budgeted as part of the fiscal year 23-24 budget to give Gary, because basically, as I understand it, Gary was given direction that here's funding to figure out which option is the best to carry forward. So that's still in the works, but if we reallocate the $100,000 that was set aside for the Route 14 projects, Gary could then come up with a design so that way we could actually fund the replacement, because we don't even know what to budget for, because we don't know what we're doing yet.
What, we could even do it for $100,000?
Probably not.
Yeah, see.
So this would, but this, at least this would tell us how much we would have to save to take care of this. And this,
I got to do it?
no, not in this area. In this section, you're dealing with a very, you're dealing with a very highly foot trafficked area that, just a month ago, somebody ran into the railings and knocked them out of the ground again and broke off the end. This is a situation that will be forever ongoing. So this is something that presented with this opportunity. I think the title of the email today was shot out of a cannon. I asked Gary for some just rough numbers for what he might assume. And Gary said that if we just did the stairs, maybe 25,000, corners, 30, and, both corners plus up the street 50 for engineering. But that's very rough numbers.
That's just engineering costs?
That's just engineering. This is a very complicated area.
Yeah.
All right, so going back, because
And construction costs?
We vote to make the post
Construction
office
costs
build a new
depend-
building on 14
Right.
and
So,
be done
hold
with
on.
this unit?
So we're in B right now. We still have not proposed to cancel approved Division Street
Correct.
sidewalks. So let's stay on track for this meeting, and let's actually do 6A. I make that proposal to cancel approved Division Street sidewalks for this year.
I'll second that.
Any,
Discussion.
yeah, is there any discussion beyond what we've already had? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So then the next option is the alternate. Or the next discussion item is the alternates, what to do with the 100,000.
3.
Your recommendation is to bank it.
Bank it.
So when are we gonna ever do the
Until-
post office?
Well, we can't even do it with this money.
I'm talking about engineering part.
You can engineer
Yeah,
it, get
this
the
is what it
engineering
is.
finally done, and then
'Cause the feds aren't
have,
gonna fix the post
Okay,
office.
what was the amount for the engineering?
150K?
Rough.
These are very rough numbers because Gary he hasn't even done the part where he figures out which is the most viable.
I presented
Okay.
3 alternates,
Yes.
but I haven't been told
Okay.
which one
Right.
to move forward with. And if you remember, those alternates
Yeah.
were designed, not even designed, they were laid out based on me taping
Right.
dimensions. So
Yes.
we actually got field survey. So I now have field survey where I can actually go and figure out, can we fit diagonal parking, 2 lanes, and a parallel parking? So now I can do that. I just haven't been told
Why should we
to
have more
do it.
parking for the federal government to operate the post office? No, I am serious. Why? I would do the least amount of improvements to fix the area and not, no. Why would we, there's parallel parking across the street on either, or, you know what I'm saying? No.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm
I'm
not
just
mad-
telling you
you're
that
not
I have not been told what option to go
Post office is
forward.
bankrupt.
Yep. Roz does not make these decisions. Roz follows directions.
The authority, I'll make the decision for you, believe me, but
But I'm pretty sure, like in Woodstock, the post office is owned by the post office, and so they just had to redo their parking lot. And they did it.
Yeah, but
It
they're on
wasn't
private
the
streets.
city.
I mean, they're on public streets.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But this.
They lease the
They
property.
lease the property from our former mayor, which is just kind of interesting. And so it's,
Well,
but they
if you
they
go
could
the
be
route
somewhere
of-
else.
If you're going the route where you're gonna put the ownership on the residents, then likewise, does it go on the property owner of the business district?
So let's go after the feds, because you know how small towns go after feds, how that ends up.
Aren't there some infrastructure act funds
So-
for this?
So we still run into a problem, though. We've got $100,000 that is now, well, it's budgeted to be spent, but it's now directed, it can be redirected somewhere else. We have $7,000 that was already slated to do some really rough looking
Living area.
at it. Thank you.
Have
So,
you done any of that, Gary?
all I did was hand sketch those three alternates and got in the field survey. That's it.
Okay, but that's not part of the 7,000? Okay,
No, that 7,000 hasn't been spent because I don't know what I'm spending it on. I
So
don't care
couldn't
because I
we,
didn't-
couldn't we, at the next meeting, take a look at the three alternates and pick one and ask you to engineer it?
Mhm.
That's what I
Yeah.
would say. I would say table it. I mean, if you guys want to do that, it's your choice to, and obviously we'll go to council, but that's what I would recommend. I
kind
wouldn't
of,
waste any more time on this today.
I kind of thought that's where we were. Is that, we were going to, I get a presentation at some point of, here, of these three.
But we've already presented the three options to you, but we've not received any direction on which option you want to pursue. That's what Roz is
I
saying.
thought we did that,
we did. We liked the one with the angled parking and then
and saving the trees on
and
the other
saving
side
the
of it.
trees parallel on the other side, if it could be done.
Yes.
If we had the
We
width.
made that vote.
Yeah.
So we did direct staff on that.
Cost on that, right?
We did direct staff.
Then I would say that that direction didn't make it to the engineer.
So that's on staff then.
No, it's all right.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that was our choice. It was
Yeah.
the angled parking. Everybody liked the angled parking idea because nobody knows how to parallel park. And because it's,
Yeah, the railings,
well,
know that.
so the $7,000 was just to rough engineer it, not even get into details
Yeah, the elevation.
for that
all
option. So I guess then, if that is the direction the council or the committee wants to suggest going, is to reallocate the 100 grand or,
No. We're not talking about
Until
that.
I sit down and crank out the numbers,
Right.
he calls it
Well,
pulling it
so
out.
at least
I
then-
call it pulling it out of somewhere
right.
else, but-
So then to table it until the next committee meeting, where we can have better numbers to look at.
But what can,
So,
what's?
let's
what would the
ask this question,
7,000
yes.
do?
If you have direction to make the model, which include the angle parking, saving trees,
All the way up to Sumner,
between,
to the edge of the post office.
that's a good question.
Whatever
what
7
was
grand will cover.
What was the,
No, the question was, do you want just in front of the post office and the side of the grocery store, or all the way up to Sumner, the full block?
to do what? Angle
Well,
park?
because you already had angle parking up near Sumner in front of those homes,
Yes.
and the idea was to continue that down, and then also put parallel parking on the east side if it can fit.
Right. Without taking out all the
So
trees.
is the direction to design that whole block, or just design to the north end of the post office?
The north end of
And
the
leave
post
north
office.
half alone?
Yeah, I think right before the driveway into the back of the post office.
Should I pull up a map so everybody is
And
clear?
there's no grants out there that we could go for this.
I know.
Okay.
So are you suggesting from here down?
Yes.
Well, at least past that, because you got the little knockout sidewalk part. That would look kind of weird.
To the length.
That's where the
Yeah, but that's where the.
Drive up,
drive-up box is. You don't want to do
Always
anything
push
with
that
that.
back, there's grass right there.
They took it out?
I think it's newspaper.
To the
They
length of
moved
the
it
property.
to City Hall.
No, they had both. As long as I've been there, I know there's been two.
There's not one still there.
No? Oh, no anymore? There used to be
No,
both of them.
because it was on the wrong side.
There's still one on City
Yeah, it
Hall.
was.
There's
So
always been one
Everyone
on City
drove
Hall.
up to it.
Got out and
No, you drove up to it,
And then
so
you had to
so
get-
you could put it out,
We're only
you had to
actually,
get up, get out and go on the other side of the sidewalk, because it was on the sidewalk.
except
side.
everybody drove up on the wrong direction
Oh.
to put it in. So they got rid of it.
we'd only actually be changing the street by the post office part.
Yeah.
The other end, we wouldn't change it, right?
Right.
We wouldn't be widening it, we wouldn't be
No.
reconstructing it, we wouldn't be anything.
Right.
But I would say this, if you're gonna do half the block, at the very least, you should overlay the rest of it
Yes.
to make it all uniform.
Is that why we have Air Street now?
That is.
I was wondering why we had.
That is.
If you look at that drawing, you can see those three cars at the top, parallel parked on the east side. So if you just picture lining up more cars behind those three, you will see that they would eventually run into the parkway.
oh, yeah, sure.
So in
I
order
mean-
to have parallel parking on the east side, I remember that discussion about that parkway being impacted possibly, and
And
you
these
guys did
trees.
not want that. So that $7,000 was to say, okay, well, now that we have the field data, can you actually fit parallel parking, 2 lanes, and a parallel parking or not? I don't think we can without impacting that parkway, so.
I think you end up making this no parking here with
And then
angle
that side
parking, but you
diagonal.
can get a lot more cars in here than you can along with the parallel parking.
So that's what I'm gonna go with, if you guys approve it.
Yeah, that's what we're.
Get rid of
And then
I was
mill and
close with
resurface the rest of the
Brainerd,
street,
though.
the resurface the rest.
because who wants half of a great street and half of an absolutely terrible street?
Well, I don't know, people that don't care about the side.
So if you get rid of the parking on, on the east side, then you save this green area, these trees, and, because that bump out is basically the width of a car, and now
Right.
you don't really have it there. Plus, if you look at the sidewalk here, it comes out
Yeah, it
further, so
does.
you've got less room.
Because one is 88, 5 feet, and the other one's only 4 feet.
That maybe,
And we're gonna
I
fix the
think
sidewalk
it's
as
more
part
than
of this, right?
5. It's 88 plus.
So in the end, this is gonna be like a $500,000 project.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we here?
it might be 200.
But I want to hear what Lou has to say about really, how does that really help us if we don't use the other fundings to get a true engineering of it? Because we only do, we have 7,000 budgeted for this.
No, we've already spent 7,000.
No, no.
No.
Oh, I thought that
It's
was-
budgeted,
we
not
had
yet
direction.
spent.
Okay.
We didn't give direction. It was a
The question is-
Yeah, the 100,000 you want, how much more would that actually help push this project along for actually start funding every year to put it, to decide to actually get this done?
Well, for one, we can finally get a full engineering done on the project. From there, we can actually get an estimate of what it's going to be, what it's going to cost, and then we can plan to set that money aside, or at least budget for the next budget year in order for the project to be paid for.
Well, I know.
But right now, we have ideas, we don't have any set plan.
So even that 7,000 isn't gonna help us to start budgeting for further years to finally get this project done. That's been going on since I've at least been on city council.
Because of
So I actually, that's the reason why I think we should allocate this money towards that, so we can start saving and budgeting.
Is that a motion?
I make that motion, thanks, Mayor.
What money?
The,
the $100,000 that would have been construction costs of the sidewalk for division, and then you still have the $7,000, so you really have $107,000 that can go towards engineering, and if there is money left over, then you've got some money. There better be, yeah, I agree, but then at that point, you have at least some money to start on what you can this year and budget the rest for next year.
I make that motion.
No, let's not do it that way.
So
At
you
least
wanna
get the
keep-
engineering, at least get the
Yeah.
No,
engineering
no,
done.
just, yeah, that's it. All we need to do is
Thank you.
approve him to do the engineering.
Of the money from the
No,
old
well, that's
sidewalks.
where it's gonna come from, but all we really need to do
What I'd
is
recommend is allocating the 100K towards engineering only for this project, and then what isn't utilized, and you can reallocate that
Whatever we decide to later on.
after the engineering is complete. Because we don't know what the bill will be.
I agree with his suggestion.
all right.
I do too.
Yeah,
I'll
it is.
amend my motion to that, Mayor.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the last item on here with sidewalks is, in the past, we haven't tried, well, we have tried, but due to some conflicts and coordination, we have not been able to apply for the Safe Routes to School grant. That's up to $250,000 towards sidewalks that are within a set range, I think is a half mile of the school, 2 miles of the school. Okay. We had a meeting with some representatives from the school to better coordinate now to potentially do this or be ready to apply next year. That's why it says the 2024 grant instead of 2023. So we just want to bring this attention that this is one of the routes to try to get some better sidewalks to the school or towards the school.
Placement and.
So Safe Routes to School only happens every other year, and the funding, the 250,000, does not include any Phase 1 or Phase 2 engineering.
Right.
That is only construction costs. So the rest of the funding for that, for doing the Phase 1 work, Phase 2 work, would all have to come out of the city's pocket. And this is federal money, not state money, so, you're dealing with a different animal. So just a suggestion. This was something that's out there because it goes between Safe Routes to School and ITEP. Is that what it is? It flip-flops every year.
I don't know. It's like up in STP flip-flop.
Roz, are there additional requirements for Phase 1 that we wouldn't normally do?
That's federal money.
Because it's federal money, and so I just want to try and help the committee understand what the cost of that might be.
Yeah, see, it would be nice if you can just get $250,000, design a sidewalk and go. But of course, when it's federal, they tie your hands. So they make you do a Phase 1 report, just like you would do for a large roadway job. You have to do that for a sidewalk, which is insane. Then all the Phase 2 plans have to be done to the federal standards. So you actually end up spending a lot more Phase 1 and Phase 2 than if you would do it yourself. So the only problem with Safe Routes to School is they cap the funding at $250. Usually when it's a federal job like Moringa Road, it's millions. So you're not as concerned about spending money for Phase 1 and Phase 2 when you're getting millions. But now you still have to do that work for $250,000. So you have to be careful.
Right.
It comes down to sidewalk selection. Where are these sidewalks that you want to do? If it's very easy, no floodplain, no environmental, no special waste, then it's definitely worth it. But if you're in an area that has some of these environmental concerns, then that's when your engineering costs in the Phase 1 realm make this funding not effective, in my opinion.
So what are we, just roughly, what are we talking about? The Phase 1, potentially Phase 2
It could be as simple as
costs might
$5,000 if it's a simple, straightforward project, or it could be $25,000 if you get some of the environmental features mixed in with it.
For an example, on Division Street that we're looking at, the amount of engineering costs we've sunk into that project is easily going close to eclipsing the cost to construct it.
No, it was like 30-some thousand.
But I'm just
if it
thinking,
was on your street with your money, we could have done that for 10.
Right.
but I'm thinking because if we have funds available to do sidewalks, let's say we have 75,000 a year, just what if? But we can get 250,000 to do sidewalks, and we are using our money to do the phase 1, phase 2. That's a good deal.
Yeah, but you gotta do the phase 1 and phase 2 according to the feds.
So
Right.
the engineers are
But
doing
I-
it, and we're paying
I see what
them.
Lisa's saying, you could take the 75,000 and
Yeah.
spend it on your local sidewalks, or you could take the 75,000 and use safe routes to school and get $250,000 worth of construction done.
So we're getting, 3+ times as much.
So it's something
sidewalk
to,
done.
so it's some, sorry, I apologize.
So I guess my,
It's
my
just
last-
something to think about as we start gearing up towards, future budgets.
And so what's the timing on the grant program, on applying for
The
it?
next cycle's 2025?
Yeah,
it
the next
25?
cycle will be 2025, because the window closes for this in October.
So my only last thought is, if you're gonna go for safe routes to school funding, go for the max.
Right.
To get the best bang per dollar of it.
Best value.
And the reason why this requires some planning is, and we didn't realize this until it was already too late. We missed the first class because the federal requirements require to attend 3 classes or seminars that they put on it. And we had already missed the first one, so we were already out for 2023.
This is
That goes
good,
along with
yeah.
better coordination.
Yeah.
And again, everything is a decision process. We're not asking for commitments, it's just something to think about. And Gary's right, if you're gonna go for it, go for the $250,000 worth of construction, not 75.
And so this would be for actual funding and construction in 2026, would what we'd be applying.
It'd be,
You'd have to go through, so they would open the doors for it in 2025, just like right now, they're closing it in, beginning of October. And then, so they would let you know where you're at, if you're granted it, and then you have to do phase 1, phase 2 before you could even start it. So depending on what sort of environmental impacts you found, or, endangered species, that could be a
The
whole,
Blandings turtle?
another couple of years,
Musky patch bumblebee,
yeah.
I believe.
So what's,
Don't laugh, there's construction
D50's
projects being held up
involvement.
because of the long-eared bat.
Well, D50 have to would be required to provide us data that would support the need for the sidewalks based on their student body and all that. So,
like a letter of support.
right, and a letter of support. And so.
So this could be used like for sidewalk down McKinley. Didn't we have someone bring up the fact that on the west side of McKinley, there's no sidewalk?
It could be used anywhere that's within 2 miles of a school, so, which almost covers nearly every sidewalk or potential sidewalk for the city.
Exactly.
Garfield,
So,
north
because you
of,
could put sidewalks down by Washington, you could put sidewalks, I mean, it gives you, you have opportunity to figure out where it makes the most sense.
But again, it requires planning, coordination. So if it'd be something in 2024, that this committee would be deciding whether or not to proceed in 2025 when it becomes available. And then staff would have to plan accordingly. It's chess, not checkers.
there's no action required, right?
No,
No.
it's just to bring it up. We originally.
Informational.
And just not to belabor this, but originally we were hoping to try to get this for 2023, until we realized that we had already missed one of the, requirements. And so then therefore it just became informational for the next one.
2025.
Okay, can we move on then?
John,
All right,
John Lavallee, Air Street.
well, we're completing the streetscape, right? We're getting a block done there south of the tracks, right, or west of the tracks, I guess. And I got to thinking about it. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I go to the parade every year, and I watch the people going down Air Street, and Air Street is just not in great shape. We did that project in 2000, right? Is when that project was originally done?
Later.
no, it's like, I want to say 2003,
I don't think so, I don't.
Early part of 2000.
All right, anyway. So since then, we really haven't done anything. And that surface is in rough shape. Now, the asphalt was full depth, so in my mind, the full depth asphalt underneath that surface is most likely in good shape. We should seriously think about milling an inch and a half of that off just the through lanes. All right, it's approximately 34 feet wide and down to the new construction. The parking areas are in decent shape. I would say to seal them, possibly do some patching in them. But that way then the new construction will tie to this and it'll look like one new road. And it'll be really nice because, I mean, Air Street is, you know, we showcase Air Street in Milk Days. And, you know, it would be nice to have a nice, you know, showcase to present. So I talked to a friend of mine who's, just because I know you probably want some numbers, talked to a friend of mine, gave him just some rough numbers on what we're looking for. If we were to, you know, mill an inch and a half on the through lanes. And, you know, I threw in like 500 square yards of full depth patching and, you know, approximately what that would cost. And he turned that around and gave me about $156,000 to do that.
For that whole length?
For that whole length from 5 points down to the new construction.
Skipping all the brick crosswalks?
That adds a lot.
Okay.
Because, you know, they have to mill all those butt joints, and they have to, you know, be careful. And I told them you can't be tracking your, you know, asphalt equipment and whatnot, all the tack and everything over that. You have to protect them. That includes, you know, because we go across the tracks, so there's some railroad liability insurance they have to pay. So, anyway, it's just something to think about.
And you got the side streets are really bad too. Is that Brainerd in front of Swiss Made? That's really bad. There's bad spots.
Well, like I said, I was just keeping it to
I
air
get
where
it.
the parade goes.
But
And
they did the
I was
streets-
trying to, you know, the least amount of money possible.
How
And-
about fixing the bricks there now, starting to sink and everything in there? Okay.
Sure, you can make that part. I was just thinking, you know, down and dirty, what would it cost to, you know, more or less paint it black? That's pretty much what we'd be doing. But on the same token, it is full depth asphalt. It's most likely in pretty good shape underneath the surface. The surface is not meant to be 20 years before it gets overlaid, even though, you know, around here we go 40, but
Not
it
anymore.
really isn't.
Not anymore.
So, you know, for being as old as it is, I guess it's held up fairly well, but it really could use a facelift. So, something to think about, and, you know, we got some money coming in at some point here. Maybe we could, you know, look into that. I know there's other things we want to do with that money, but I think, once again, Air Street for, you know, 1 weekend a year is, you know, is something we showcase. And I think, you know, for the whole town, that'd be a great way to, you know, spend some of that money.
Might want to invest a little in Hart Street too.
And Grant.
Well, let's not get into that, because this list could go on forever. But
So,
yeah,
those are
I
that.
get it, I do. And I think that that's something we got to figure out what we're going to do, just like every year, with the funds we have and what we're going to do with them. So thank you for bringing that up, and I put it on the list of things to consider, and we will, I think. We probably ought to start considering some of that stuff pretty soon. I think once we get, your guys are started, right?
For,
the-
the road program?
Yeah. And from that, they were going to determine where they were going to go. And have they made, all those determinations been done now?
They're beginning construction and skip patching and all that right now. Determination of where we go next will depend on funding for next year. You know, Deb and I have just talked to her last week about sort of like when the budget expectations come out and sort of what we're projecting for income for next year will determine sort of where the program goes, because it's going to take a couple of years before we see the full realization of the referendum.
Oh, I know, but how that's balanced is something that this committee needs to determine.
Sure.
I mean, from information from you and Gary and so on.
Sure.
And including the contractors that are evidently doing some of that evaluation as well, right?
As far as which there's nothing, they're not determining anything as far as road conditions elsewhere.
Alderman, are you talking about the hot patching that the city staffing will do versus the road program that's being taking place today?
This, is it Curran?
Curran?
They're doing certain work. I read your letter on Facebook, and it said that, they're determining where they're going to, put these surfaces down.
No, it's where we had the skip patches, we selected the locations for the skip patches. But the determination that we make is, are these skip patches, what I had said in my announcement was basically, this might not be everything, because if quantities change, locations change, this isn't an end-all be-all list. But the determination for that is only based upon sort of, we're right up against our budget number. We had to take off 12% of the asphalt patches and the compliance and acceptance testing in order to meet our budget. So, where we end up stopping is determined by sort of what they get into for labor, because even today or yesterday, they had concerns over being able to do as many patches as were proposed, because they assumed that each one of those locations was one patch. And that's not true, because there are some locations that have multiple patches. So this was something that I discussed with them yesterday.
Okay, well, at some point, we still have to determine, how much is in each of those categories that we put together is going to be applied next year. And if we are going to do any resurfacing, where, right? When should we do that?
Once we have an understanding of how much funding we're going to get, we can determine sort of how we split it up. One of the biggest priorities is going to be McKinley, West McKinley, because last year, years prior, repairs were made and it was skimmed with 1 inch of patch, assuming that they were going to be paved.
So the process for the budget for 24-25 will start, I believe it's either the end of October or right at the beginning of November, where we start reaching out to department heads to start figuring out expenses there, and Deb starts crunching what our projected revenues and the MFT and all that. So
Yeah, but that's a different order than we've done it in the past.
okay,
Because we used to determine, we had.
Yeah, well, the biggest difference, I understand what you're saying, so, and he wasn't here to know that. So the Transportation Committee would get a list of all the road conditions previously in about this time to October, and then they would determine what streets were going to get done. So I think the next step is for next year is actually look at where you want to do skip patching and where you want to do reclamate based on city staffing's determination in recommendations, and then the committee makes those determinations of let's do these, this, and that.
And then that helps you with your budget proposal to the admin committee about,
The big thing that we don't know though going into this year is, we're going to start receiving the 1% sales tax, and we actually won't start collecting it probably until, it'll start collecting in January, but we won't actually see distributions until February, March, right? So, and you're going to be creating the budget for next fiscal year in February and approve, hopefully, get through that in March and improve for April. So next year's budget cycle for transportation, my recommendation is not to consider any of that sales tax money that's going to come in until the next fiscal year, where you'll have a full year of collection and you'll know how much you're going to be collecting based on projections, because you will have collected several months already. Just bank that bit of money and then do a large project in 2026.
Air Street.
Yeah, I would agree.
2025.
2025. Yeah.
Okay.
2025, 2026 year.
I think that's what we want to look at next, is that, is there anything, that, including Air Street, I guess, that needs to be resurfaced? Or are we not going to do that at all?
Well, next year, I mean, we know we're gonna get approximately $200,000 in
Yes,
NFT funds. I
yeah.
mean, we can work on spending that.
So we should be able to, because that's what Dave would give you. We think
Right.
we're going to get this much MFT money. So we will know approximately what that will be, and that'll allow you to set a budget for work to be done in 24, 25. Then in 25, 26 is when, you'll have a full allotment, a year of collection, a little over a year of collecting sales tax, and you'll
Well,
have
and we'll know what's coming
Yeah,
in for the.
right,
so
and
we're
you'll have an
basically
idea
at
then,
2
because
years.
you'll have some running numbers to be able to make a prediction of what it's gonna be
Right, but
going forward.
I thought we were talking for the next MFT cycle to continue the program we're doing this year.
Indeed, yes.
So,
Well, that's okay. That's what I was going to say too, is that, we know how we're going to get an approximate amount of MFT money, but we never determined that it was going to go towards resurfacing. We thought, depending again where we end up, is that we may have to do a lot more patching, and we could possibly get a lot more of that not resurfacing.
Reclamate.
Yeah.
Rejuvenation.
Rejuvenation.
I believe the committee's, expectation was that the next fiscal year, you would continue what you did this year.
Because we're only doing the north side of town
Right.
this year.
right.
There's a
And
whole
not even
half
all
of the
that.
town. Right. There's a whole big chunk of town that we're not touching this year.
My
So the idea was, to get to Matt's side of town, Matt and Charlie's side of town.
Well, then there's also,
Next
though, that, that requires a lot of, if you ramp up, in other words, you spend all your money towards that, do you have the staff to do it? Or are you going to contract it?
For which part, the skip patching? We are not at the point where we could do full-scale skip patching at the speed that Curran is, or any contractor. It's gonna take a number of years, because you're talking, we have on order a 4-ton asphalt machine, which is basically gonna do maintenance patches here and there when we do intakes, service structures, things like that. We don't have a,
On a paper.
we do have a roller.
We don't
Yeah,
have a
but-
plant.
Yeah, and we are, quite a ways away. Basically, what I was looking to do with the patch cart is to start doing some of these smaller repairs in-house. But when it comes to the large scale of these patches, it's costly. And we just don't have, there's a staff of 7, but that includes me and a technician, mechanic, which gets us down to 5. And that's every bit of infrastructure, roads, underground, everything. So we're very limited on that. As far as rejuvenation goes, I think we got pretty far back in the roads that we've paved recently this year, haven't we, Gary?
It's been 5 years, but we can do another 5 in this program, and then there would be a pause,
Sure.
probably a 2-year pause on rejuvenation.
So next year we could, if we propose keeping with the same amount, we could do the same thing next year, where we spend roughly, the same mix on patches versus rejuvenation.
And that means no resurfacing.
That would mean no resurfacing, correct?
Okay, that's where I was, I
Just
just
for one
wanted,
more year.
okay, all right.
Correct.
So, but I will say that hopefully with the addition of the asphalt cart, that we can make a noticeable impact in areas where, I would I'm going to, Lou, definitely calls me out for it all the time, but, as part of the budget process for next year, I will be asking for, a planer for the skid steer. So that way we can maybe grind out some of these areas that have pockmarked, skip patch or, cold patch areas and start making them smooth here and there. At least, scrape it off, make it black.
All right. What's your say? You guys, there's City Hall parking lot
Oh,
here.
the last thing I want to talk about was we probably want to look at sealing that at some point. How long's it been? 4 years?
The lot just here,
3 years?
3 years?
Oh, yeah, it's close, I guess.
Well, it's already got some cracking, and definitely, definitely the asphalt's wearing off the aggregate on top, so, it's cheap, and it'll, definitely prolong the life. But maybe, also, I don't know where the police guys park also back there. I haven't looked at that lot.
Well, that's a new lot.
I just looked at
No?
this lot. They're both new,
Well,
Got all redone.
but you want to get on it before
Before,
you
yeah.
have issues.
Right.
You want to get on it sooner rather than
No, I
later.
agree, John.
Once you have issues, it's too late.
He's correct. It's no different than.
And it's pretty cheap. You're sealing, we're not talking about rejuvenation, we're talking about literally driveway sealing. So you'd have to restripe it, but
Time for talking about, add that to the budget for next year.
I'll get a quote.
that's all, Charlie, thank you.
So, yeah, okay. What was that little hole that was in the middle of the,
Sinkhole.
That was a 20-foot deep, very beautiful brick well that had, I believe there was images on one of the monthly reports I did, but it was a path to Narnia that went straight down to Middle Earth.
where? No.
There's in the parking lot, if you notice out there, there's a square saw cut.
Out here?
Yes, with the Julie locate
Yeah.
OKs near it. We had a sinkhole, and I sent the guys up there, just saw cut it, see what it is. They started using the Vector truck, and they put on a tube extension. I believe they were approximately 20 feet down. They hadn't found bottom. It was beautiful clay brick all the way down, and probably a 3-foot circumference, 30-inch circumference. We couldn't find any other than clay, like a 4 or a 6-inch clay, about 3 feet from top.
Parking lot in, they didn't see that?
It
Probably just mudded it over and then.
yeah, there was
blacktop.
just there was
Bank was here before.
there was some concrete debris and then just junk.
So it finally gave way.
Yeah.
And
It gave way. The guys came back and said, you might want to take a look at this. And I said, you know what, see if you can find bottom. And they played with it for another couple hours, and they're like, we can't find bottom. I was like, all right, time to fill it back up. So we were hoping, we filled it back up with stone, cemented the top of it so that we wouldn't have any, sinking, and patched it. I have images I'll show you afterwards.
That's really cool.
We could have put a nice piece of plexiglass there, a light.
items for future meetings?
Where are we with Diggins? I thought we had funds to get that all the way out. No?
For March lighting.
Okay. March lighting means
Go out for bid.
go out for bid then? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Diggins from where to where?
From the tracks to Lawrence.
Boys Lake Field.
Oh, okay.
In that area.
Okay.
That's quite of a wavy road. I didn't realize it was that. It's too bad we couldn't get like sidewalk to go with that to take out to the park, but or bike path or something,
We are at bare minimum.
Yeah.
That project, there were things I wanted to do with that money that, construction prices are just through the roof. So
Yeah.
There are things like drywalls I wanted to put in and new culverts I wanted to put in, but, remember, we applied for this money 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
But with the construction prices, it's just like everything else through the roof. We're just literally milling, patching, resurfacing, and new shoulders. And that's all that's left.
Thank you, Gary.
At a cost of,
That's all grant covered, right?
80-20 split?
Oh, okay.
No future,
I'll make a motion.
second?
what's the motion?
Adjourn, oh.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Gary.
You guys are fun. Hey, Lou, did you take pictures?